One of the benefits of the COVID pandemic has been that extra time at home to get some real writing done. Just really sit down and focus on some sharp storytelling. All I had to decide was, is it going to be an indie darling or the next blockbuster, and then get writing. Well, outline and then write. Research and then outline and then write. And maybe get some inspiration and then research and then outline and then write. But first, I should probably repaint the office and like Twitter with a dog. Okay, so procrastination is definitely my superpower. But I have found one of the best ways to delay actually writing while also getting inspiration and research done. Podcast. There's so many great podcasts out there on movie analysis, filmmaking, and storytelling. But I want to focus on my 5 favorite podcasts specifically for screenwriting. So let's go. First, honorable mentions. On Writing. This is the WGA East podcast. Its output is sporadic but averages about 2 short episodes a month and has a good backlog of shows so you can cherry pick the ones interesting to you. 2 of my favorite guests, Greta Gerwig and Michael Arndt. Third and Fairfax. This is the WGA West podcast. They have a little more regular output, about 1 hour-long episode a week. My favorite guests, Scott Frank and Bill and Ted writers Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. Draft Zero. This show has been on for years. It's hosted by 2 Aussies, Jazz Fisher and Stuart Willis, and averages about 1 show a month. The hosts are entertaining and unpretentious. They clearly love movies and great storytelling, and that comes through in each show. The shows are extremely long, some over 2 hours, and they talk fast. A fast-talking 2 hours is a lot of information to process. Brian Koppelman's The Moment. This is a bit of a cheat since it's not a screenwriting podcast. Koppelman started out as a writer of the underrated Rounders before becoming a showrunner. He has some great, incisive interviews with screenwriters including Tony Gilroy, fellow BU alum Scott Rosenberg, and Ed Solomon. These conversations are fun to listen to, as well as informative. Team Deakins. This is a great filmmaking podcast with cinematographer Roger Deakins and his wife James Deakins. It just started at the beginning of the pandemic. They look at every aspect of filmmaking, and several focusing on writer-directors like Chris Miller and Phil Lord, Joel Cohen, and Ed Zwick. Okay, no more cheating. These are my favorite 5 podcasts that deal specifically with screenwriting. Script Apart. This is a new podcast hosted by journalist Al Horner. The show looks at first drafts but also ventures into the habits and writing philosophy of the writers. Maybe less than a year old, but it found its footing quickly. As of April 2021, there are only 24 episodes ranging from half an hour to hour and a half, but there's not one skippable episode. Some of the best guests, Derek Kolstad, who wrote John Wick.
I took the name John because I wanted a simple name. John McClane, James Bond. And I think it was just became John Wick.
And Meg LaFauve, who co-wrote Inside Out and Captain Marvel.
We have to be in Joy's emotional point of view. We have to believe what she believes.
Warren's approach balances admiration with insightful questions with ease. On the Page. This show has been running since 2007. Its reputation benefits from being one of the first and most long-running podcasts. Host Pilar Alessandra is a former script reader and a current script consultant and educator. You might be tempted to skip her show when the theme song comes on. Skip ahead 36 seconds and then listen to the rest of the show. It's worth it. Pilar knows storytelling and she knows what questions to ask her diverse guests.
How do you read so many scripts? I might get a surprise today. I might read something and I think I know it's coming, and I don't. If I get a surprise in a script, it's a great script.
The show covers everything: movies, TV, video games, business, craft, notes, and loglines. Not every episode is a must-listen, but when she hits a topic you're curious about, it's fantastic. And she has literally covered hundreds of topics to choose from. Script Notes. This is probably the best-known screenwriting podcast. It's been around since 2011, and unlike the previous 2 shows, this one is hosted by 2 working screenwriters, John August and Craig Mazin. If you saw the title of this video and clicked play, you probably already listened to this podcast. It not only celebrates the craft, but it breaks it down into understandable chunks without taking the fun out of writing. And our guests are always great. They do focus quite a bit of time on Writers Guild negotiations, as well as contract and business talk. This is probably extremely useful to many working writers, but not for screenwriting wannabes like me, so I skipped those parts. The best part of the pod, the 3-page challenge, where they critically analyze the first 3 pages of listener-submitted scripts.
The 3 pages open with On Black, and we hear this voiceover before we get to the first image. You see On Black in screenplays a lot. I think you don't actually see it that often in movies and TV shows, because I think we realize that, wow, looking at nothing is actually not that interesting.
So much of the show is geared to working screenwriters, but the 3-page challenge is essential for emerging writers as well. Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith. Also starting in 2011, Jeff Goldsmith's podcast and accompanying magazine Backstory is an ongoing love letter to cinematic storytelling. The host clearly loves movies of all kinds. His passion and energy are infectious. He can drift into fanboy mode every so often.
The daily special added to today's menu happens to be seafood. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A.
But with some of the high-profile guests he has, I can't blame him. Listening to him pick the brains of writers is a great motivator to get back to writing. He asks every writer about their process and their favorite moments and toughest scenes. I look forward to each episode of the show. The only reason I ever skip an interview is if I haven't seen the movie they're discussing yet, since their talks are full of spoilers, though he does give plenty of warning before getting to them. So we've had amazing podcasts from journalists, script consultants, screenwriters, and fanboys. What could top these greats? Number 1, The Screenwriting Life with Meg LaFauve and Laurie McKenna. This show has been around for just over a year, but every episode is riveting. Other podcasts focus on the business or the craft or the process. Screenwriting Life covers all of those topics, but also gets into the emotional journey of writing. The show speaks to the soul of the writer and their mental health. The new show drops every Sunday, and there have been over 40 so far. Meg and Laurie are actively working in the industry, so they start each show sharing the challenges and triumphs they've encountered over the week, both in screenwriting and in life.
Today we're going to be talking about not giving up and the importance of hope, which we think is a really important thing to talk about right now.
But before we talk about hope, we're going to talk about our week and what we like to call adventures in screenwriting.
They don't detach their personal life from the discussions like many shows do. They fully acknowledge and celebrate that your marriage, your parenting, your parents, your friends are all integral parts of you, and that affects your writing. Meg LaFauve, who is like a fairy godmother of screenwriting and has used her magic to help bring Inside Out and the underrated Good Dinosaur to life, encourages the listeners to go into the lava, meaning don't avoid what you're afraid of. You need to get right into those tough emotional fears and moments. That's the lava. That's the good stuff. From there, you will find the truth of your characters and your writing. She also acknowledges this doesn't happen in your first draft, the barf draft she calls it, but only through multiple iterations.
And I don't want that to overwhelm you. I want that to excite you. Get going, get writing. I want you to write 10 versions of that short film. So start writing them. Let's go. Let's have fun.
Really, so much of this show should qualify as therapy. Even producer Jeff Graham often gets in the mix. As an evolving writer himself, he serves as the audience's proxy, asking questions that many of us have. And this show doesn't just float through the nebulous regions of the emotional journey. It also drills down to act structure, outlining, character development, and dealing with notes. In the last 6 months or so, they've also incorporated more interviews, widening the perspective of the show. Some great guests so far: Script Notes' own John August, ubiquitous podcast guest Ed Solomon, and Pixar's Andrew Stanton, which is one of the best podcast episodes I've listened to on any show and will be re-listening to it many times in the future. Additionally, the show has an extremely active Facebook group that serves as a community for emerging writers to share their victories and struggles, as well as to ask questions to the hosts. It truly is a complete screenwriting experience and will motivate you to get your butt in the chair and refocus on getting your own screenwriting done. Once I listen to one more episode. Thank you for watching the first episode of Chicks Flicks. Please like and subscribe.